Sometimes you play the Angels, and sometimes Shohei Ohtani just happens. He's the best baseball player in the world, and he showed it. Oh, did he show it on Monday night against the Orioles? I'll recap the O's loss to the Angels, plus talk about Grayson Rodriguez's struggles and a little bit about the O's roster move to send Kyle Stowers down on Monday. That's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Tuesday, May 16th, 2023, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we're going to recap the Orioles' 9-5 loss to the Angels as Grayson Rodriguez struggled and Shohei Ohtani put on an absolute show. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that one. Then we'll dive a little deeper into Grayson's start, what we should be worried about and what we shouldn't be, as he's just 8 starts into his big league career. And then finally talk about the Orioles roster move on Monday as they once again sent Kyle Stowers down to AAA. We'll take a look at what his future could be at this point with the Orioles. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Orioles fall to the Angels 9-5 on Monday night in game 1 of a 4-game series. Just the second time this year that the Orioles have lost the opening game of a series. The other one was last Monday when they were shut out by the Rays and then went on to win the next 2 and win the series. So hopefully the O's can do that because, quite frankly, I came into this series thinking this way. Well, the O's are playing a solid Angels team, right? They're 21-20. You got a 4-game series at home. You should try to win 3 out of 4. And when you do, the loss you would expect is the game Shohei Ohtani starts. Now, this game didn't exactly go the way we thought it would, but they're still on that plan. They lose the game that Shohei starts, and hopefully the O's can come back and win the next 3. But before that, going to recap the Orioles' 9-5 loss to the Angels on Monday night that sent the Orioles to 26-15 on the season. Going to get you the 5 things you need to know. And the first thing you need to know is that sometimes you just get done in by Shohei Ohtani. Sometimes you're facing Ohtani and you just have to deal with the consequences. Now, Ohtani wasn't amazing on the mound. We'll get to that in a second, but he did go 7 innings, and you'll take that every single time. But what he did at the plate on Monday night far outweighed any struggles he had on the rubber. Ohtani DHing, of course, as he's the starting pitcher and hitting third, goes 4 for 5 against Orioles pitching in this game. He had a triple, he had a homer, he had a couple of singles, he had 3 RBIs and a walk with no strikeouts. He had 3 hard hit balls. He had 2 at-bats, 1 in the 7th and 1 in the 9th with a chance to hit for the cycle. He was a double shy, grounded out in the 7th and had just a single in the 9th. Orioles fans actually booing a little bit that he didn't try to go to second base. Some of those were Ohtani fans as well, but booing that he didn't try to go to second base to go for the cycle. O's fans trying to see 2 cycles in 4 days, I should say. That's a little bit greedy. But sometimes Ohtani just happens. He's one of the best hitters on the planet. He is the best baseball player on the planet. And he showed it off. It's not only hitting, but he was solid on the mound. Yes, he did give up 5 runs, but it was over 7 innings. He only allowed 4 hits, struck out 5 and walked 2 and threw 98 pitches. And, when he got his team that big lead, he got them through the 7th inning, despite not having his absolute best stuff by any stretch of the imagination on Monday night. That was a full display of how good Ohtani could be. And again, it wasn't even near his best start on the mound, but he was just so good at the plate. He was good enough on the rubber. He's just a different type of player. And again, he is the best player in the world. But the second thing you need to know from this one is the Orioles did hit the long ball against Shohei Ohtani. Now, the O's had only 6 hits on the night, and 4 of them came against Ohtani. But 3 of those hits were home runs. One was a Gunnar Henderson single in the 2nd inning. The other hits were an Adam Frazier 2-run homer in the 2nd that put the Orioles up 2-1 at the time. Shout out to Adam Frazier, who is now 5 for 9 in his career against Shohei Ohtani. That's pretty good for kind of a light hitting second baseman. But Frazier hit the home run 101 off the bat, 382 feet onto the flag court. And for Frazier, it was his 5th home run of the year. He had only 3 all of last year with the Mariners. So a little more power this year for Adam Frazier, who has his walk rate way up, his strikeouts down. He hasn't been a great hitter, but he's still been productive at times for the Orioles. Then after the O's fall behind again, Anthony Santander comes through with a home run. In the 3rd inning, he hits a 2-run shot, got a hanging sweeper and just deposited it into center field. 103.1 off the bat, 416 feet for Santander's 2-run shot that put the Orioles up 4-3. Of course, they went behind again, but then Cedric Mullins got to Shohei Ohtani in the 5th inning, a solo shot that was 104 off the bat, went 408 feet, and it was awesome. The little man was in the crowd. AJ Rodriguez, the popular streamer who gained popularity for a lot of things, including the video where he says, "It's Cedric Mullins again. It's Cedric Mullins. I can't escape him." He was there at the game. Mullins signed his jersey and wrote, "You can't escape me." And then Mullins homered at the game. That's a really awesome moment. But yeah, 3 long balls for the Orioles against Ohtani. Same thing they did the last time Ohtani pitched at Camden Yards in 2021. Mullins, Santander, and DJ Stewart took in deep in that game. Now, that game was an Orioles win. It was actually the game where the O's snapped their 19-game losing streak in 2021. This one was unfortunately a loss, but it's still nice to see them get to one of the best pitchers in baseball. And speaking of Anthony Santander, who homered in this game and did have a nice day at the plate, 2 for 4 with that home run and a couple of hard hit balls. He's really starting to come around at the plate. He also played a new position on Monday. And the third thing you need to know from this game is that Anthony Santander got his first career start at first base on Monday night. And I thought he wasn't bad. He didn't really have many tough plays to make, didn't have to make many picks or anything, but he played the entire game defensively at first. It didn't mess with him at the plate. Still had a nice night with the 2 for 4 and the home run. And this is something we've been hearing about for a while. You know, when the Orioles traded Trey Mancini last year, they were working out Santander at first base. Then when they were trying to decide, would they keep a backup first baseman or would they just go with Ryan Mountcastle on the opening day roster? They were working out Santander at first base. They do have now James McCann and Ryan O'Hearn on the roster, both guys who are going to be better defensively at first. But it was nice to see the Orioles go with Santander in this game, it go well, and knowing if they have to in the future, they can play him at first base again. Fourth thing you need to know from this one, moving over to the pitching side, is that Grayson Rodriguez was not good in this game. There's really no way to sugarcoat it. This was, you could argue it wasn't his worst start because he had a very similar start a couple weeks ago against the Royals. That is a much worse lineup than this Angels lineup. You know, the Royals don't have Trout or Ohtani, but it was still pretty bad. It was the shortest start of his big league career. He went just 3 1/3 innings, allowing 8 runs on 9 hits with 3 Ks, 3 walks, and 2 home runs allowed through just 79 pitches on the day, allowed 8 hard hit balls. And really the kicker was that 4th inning when he allowed 5 earned runs, a leadoff homer from Chad Wallach, a backup catcher, which was then followed up by just an unbelievable Shohei Ohtani blast in that inning. Ohtani hit one 115 miles per hour off the bat, 456 feet out to the gates above the section to the left of the flag court. You do not see home runs hit there at Camden Yards. Ohtani did it for a 3-run shot that put the Angels up 7-4. It was a hanging slider, and it was an absolute moonshot from Ohtani. Rodriguez just didn't have it. Now, we're going to break down his start and his struggles coming up a little bit later, but again, he was not good on Monday night. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from this one, and speaking on the pitching side, is the Orioles bullpen was asked to do a lot in this game. Grayson Rodriguez only recorded 10 outs. And the Orioles pen, luckily they did go back to 13 pitchers before Monday's game, but they honestly did well for the task they were given. Between Logan Gillespie, Austin Voth, Brian Baker, Danny Coulombe, and Mike Baumann, the Orioles bullpen came together to throw 5 2/3 innings and allow just 1 run. That 1 run was allowed by Gillespie. After that, Voth, Baker, Coulombe, and Baumann each pitched scoreless innings out of the bullpen, and each looked pretty good doing it to keep the Orioles within striking distance. It was a 9-4 game, really, when it was fully bullpen time, and they kept it at 9. O's offense just wasn't able to rally. Actually, nobody scored. Neither team scored in the final 4 innings of this game, but the Angels' 9 runs on 17 hits, mostly against Grayson Rodriguez, was just too much to overcome. Too much Shohei Ohtani. and the Angels win it 9-5 over the O's and take game one of a 4-game series. And of course, you can just laud over what Ohtani did at the plate and to a lesser extent, but still on the mound. But I think the biggest Orioles-centric story from Monday night is really the struggles of Grayson Rodriguez and how he's looked this bad in 2 of his last 3 starts. So coming up next, we'll try to break down what's going wrong with Rodriguez, but why it's not yet time to panic for the Orioles' young starter. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Now, if you're looking to go see Shohei Ohtani take on the Orioles this week, as I might be as well, you might have to make that decision at the last minute. And if you do, check out Game Time because it's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the events near you. And they've got killer deals on last-minute tickets. And with their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you will have. They've got flash deals, last-minute tickets, and on the app. The app is really easy to use, and it's great because every section you click on, it gives you an image of the seat view. So you can really see what your seats are going to be like. You get images of those seats before you buy, so you know exactly what you're getting, and you buy tickets in a matter of seconds. That's why the app is so good. 2 taps and you're set. You got your tickets. They're sent directly to your phone, so you don't have to dig through your email either. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Orioles fall to Shohei Ohtani and the Angels 9-5 on Monday night. But really the big Orioles-centric story of the night on the negative side was Grayson Rodriguez, who, as I mentioned already, just got pummeled. 8 runs on 9 hits over 3 1/3 innings, 3 Ks, 3 walks, and 2 home runs. Rodriguez's ERA now 6.57 through his first 8 MLB starts. And I get the worry from a lot of Orioles fans, right? I get it. The ERA is not good. And although he's had some good starts, the eye test in general has not been great. And really his issue throughout the year, even when he's been good, is just struggling with command. And for some of the year, it's been with his different off-speed pitches, whether it be the changeup or the slider or the curveball. But on Monday, he really struggled with command of all of his pitches. And that's even more concerning, right? Because even if you have a couple, when you have as good a stuff as Rodriguez has, you can get by. But it's not really a stuff issue. And he did make a good adjustment on Monday night. His cutter has just been terrible this year. And guys like Sorare and others who, know a lot about pitching have been saying it. Stop throwing the cutter. Well, he only threw 7 cutters out of 79 pitches on Monday night. So that was a good step forward because his cutter has been getting mashed this year. Opponents have a .636 slugging percentage against his cutter this year coming into Monday night's start. So it was good that he ditched it a bit. But he just could not find the grip on those other pitches. He only got 8 whiffs on 37 swings, and 4 of them were on the 4-seam fastball because he just didn't have his other stuff. His changeup was the number 2 pitch on Monday night, 19 changeups to 32 4-seamers, but he left it up in the zone just far too often. I mean, really the pitch of the night that kind of summed up Rodriguez's night is, he gets into a jam in the first, but he gets out of it. He keeps it scoreless. Then in the second inning, they end up getting a run off of him, and they make it a 1-0 game. Orioles come back at the 2-run homer from Frazier, bottom 2, it's 2-1. And he comes back out there in the third, and he gets it to first and second with 2 outs. He throws 2 nasty pitches to Gio Urshela, gets him chasing wildly on a really good curveball, and has him 0-2. And he goes to the changeup, which his changeup is better against lefties, but I don't mind him going to it against a righty as long as he buries it. And you can see the stuff playing out, but he just didn't have the location. So it's an 0-2 changeup that he leaves up in the middle of the plate. Yeah, it was on the inside corner, but it was up, and Urshela ropes it down the third baseline for a 2-run double that puts the Angels up 3-2. And yeah, Rodriguez made other bad pitches. Don't get me wrong. He gave up 8 runs in 3 1/3, but that was kind of the nutshell of the night and kind of the nutshell of some of his struggles this year. You get ahead with some good stuff, and then you kind of lose it. Now, in terms of the command, it is good that the stuff itself is still there for Rodriguez, right? I mean, he was averaging 98 and was up at 99. That was his hardest fastball of the year. The spin rate on the fastball was up, but he just struggled to command it. He gave up some big hits on it because it was in the middle of the plate too much. But maybe even more of an issue than the fastball command is that he had much worse command of the changeup, the slider, and the curveball, which means, and some people pointed this out, hitters can kind of, at times, not all the time, but at times, sit on his four-seam fastball. And specifically Monday night, you could tell the Angels mostly, although Shohei's bomb was on a slider, but the Angels mostly could just sit on Rodriguez's fastball. And they could square it up because, yeah, it has good life and it spins pretty well. And it is 98 to 99, but it's not the hoppiest fastball in the world. And he wasn't getting it far enough up in the zone. So guys were all over it. And that becomes a problem. And especially when, hey, it's only 32 four-seamers out of 79 pitches. So he still threw changeups and sliders and curveballs and even a couple of cutters. But when you're not really commanding those pitches well, and you don't feel you can really go to them. I mean, he had 2 called strikes on the changeup, 3 on the slider, 1 on the curve. He's got to do a little better than that. And so when you don't have the command of those pitches, and even when they're called strikes, some of them weren't ending up where Rodriguez wanted them or where Adley's target was. Then you feel like you have to go to your fastball because you have better command of it and you trust that pitch more. And that can get you by in the minors, but that can't get you by in the majors. You cannot rely on just having 99 to get major league hitters out, especially when their names are Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. So that is really one of the other big issues, is that he's just going to the fastball too much because he doesn't trust the command consistently of the off speeds right now. And what's kind of compiling the issue is, this is more anecdotal. I got to really go back and dive through pitch by pitch for Grayson, which I will do to see if this is the case. But when you're watching, it does feel like when he has a pitch get away from it, whether it's a changeup that he leaves up or he spikes a curveball or a slider just kind of spins. It's not like all of his breaking balls look like that. Some of them look really good, but some of them don't come out right. It seems like every time one of those 3 pitches, the changeup, the curveball, the slider, just comes out a little wrong, leaves it up, whatever, doesn't get it where he wants. It immediately scares him off from that pitch, and he goes to, at the very least, the next pitch as a four-seamer. That's predictable for major league hitters. When they see a changeup float up above the zone, they say, all right, that's not where he wanted to throw that. He's going to go fastball here next. And generally, he's going to throw a fastball in the zone because he's got better command of that pitch than anything else, and they can sit on it. And even though it's 98, 99 with good spin, major league hitters can still hit that in this day and age. He's just got to hone in the command. Now, he's still missing bats, right? Even though he only had 8 whiffs Monday, he's generally been the best Orioles starter at missing bats throughout the season. It just feels like when, even though the stuff is good, and even though he's missing bats, the location is not good. And when he does get hit, it's not a lot of soft contact. It's a lot of hard contact. And it was a lot of very hard contact on Monday night. And that's just the general issue. And is his fastball bad? No. It's got a 680 slugging against it and a 340 average coming into Monday. But that's because he's had to throw it so much because he's not trusting the other pitches. So when guys are sitting on it, no matter how good the fastball is, they're going to hit it. Now, the changeup only has a 313 slug against it. So he's got to find that. And when he's had his good starts, he's really found the changeup. That's been the one thing for Grayson Rodriguez. When he has been good, it's been him finding that changeup. You look back on some of his recent starts that have been really good, he's found the change. He's been able to start it at the knees and break it down and get swings and misses on righties and lefties. That's been really the difference. He's had a better slider and a better curveball, but really the changeup, I mean, that is his off-speed pitch. And when that is there, the command just wasn't there Monday, but when it's there, he is a really dangerous pitcher and he is a really good pitcher, and he pitches up to what he was billed as the top pitching prospect in baseball. I am not even close at this point to giving up on Grayson Rodriguez. I mean, just 3 starts ago, he went 5 scoreless with 9 Ks against the Tigers. This guy can get hitters out at a high rate. It is concerning that he's had these 2 out of 3 bad starts with a really solid start against the Rays last week, sandwiched in the middle of the bad start against KC and the bad start against the Angels. I get it. But I'm not giving up. He's not going to AAA. He's here for a reason because he is one of the 5 best options for starting pitchers right now for the Orioles, even when they're trying to win games. He's one of the 5 best options. He's staying here. It's been a weird mix where it's like good start, bad start. Then he had 3 good ones in a row. Now he's had bad, good, bad. And the 2 bads were really bad, the Kansas City start and this one. He's hard to figure out right now, but he's not going to AAA. He's going to work on it here, and he will figure it out. He's been too good in his career. He's too highly touted of a prospect. He has too much talent, and his stuff is too good, and the demeanor on the mound is too good. He's not going to lose it. This isn't going to hit his confidence. He will be fine. But remember, he is an MLB rookie. Grayson Rodriguez is 23 years old. He has made 8 starts in Major League Baseball. 8. Look up Randy Johnson. He was terrible for a long time before he became the big unit. Plenty of pitchers in the majors. Takes him a while to adjust. He's 23. He's made 8 starts. He will be fine. It's a little tough right now because the O's are trying to win games. And although they've won most of his starts, they're 6-2 in Grayson's starts this year. It's not like he's preventing them from winning a lot. He is struggling a little bit right now. But I think he'll find it. He'll be fine. He's a rookie. It's 8 starts. Just give him a little bit of patience. But the Orioles did give a little less patience to another young player on Monday, as Kyle Stowers, amidst some bad struggles, was sent down to AAA for the 2nd time this year. So coming up next, we'll finish off the pod with a look at Stowers, how bad he's been, and what's next for him now that he's been demoted again by the Orioles. So as the O's lost 9-5 to the Angels on Monday night, they dropped the opener of a series for just the 2nd time this year. But they've got game 2 coming up tonight and a chance to even up the series at 1 game apiece. And they play at 6:35 p.m. Eastern time tonight. You can catch every pitch of the Orioles' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Orioles. So the O's did make a roster move before Monday's game, and it was one that I did see coming a little bit. I talked about it on Monday's episode, how the Orioles were most likely going to go back to 13 pitchers. A couple days over the weekend, they went 14 hitters and 12 pitchers. I figured, they were playing the next 7 days, they're going to want to go back to 13 pitchers, and they weren't quite ready to bring in Dylan Tate or Michael Givens. Both of those guys will have rehab assignments and pitch in AAA Norfolk tonight. But they still wanted another pitcher. So they called up Logan Gillespie, who, he's been fine in AAA. Wasn't very good early in the year in the majors. 5 innings, 4 runs, 8 hits, 5 Ks and 3 walks, but was better after going down to AAA. 7 appearances for the Tides, 6 innings, 1 run, 5 hits, 7 Ks and 2 walks. So he gets called back up. And Gillespie did pitch on Monday night. They kind of needed him to wear it a little bit, and he pitched well enough to keep the O's in the game after Rodriguez left. He went an inning and 2/3, a run on 4 hits with a strikeout and a walk, but he threw 40 pitches. So we could see Gillespie go down on Tuesday after 40 pitches. He's not going to be available, and he really didn't look that good on Monday. We could maybe see DL Hall come back. He hasn't pitched since last Wednesday. I believe his start day is scheduled for Tuesday. They could scratch him and call him up to have long relief. They could maybe call up Noah Denoyer for the first time. Everybody else hasn't been down in AAA for long enough to be able to be recalled unless there's an injury per the new rules. So I think it's probably going to be DL Hall unless they just bag Tate and Givens' rehab appearance and go with one of those guys. But I think it would be Hall, maybe Noah Denoyer. But I digress because Logan Gillespie's here because Kyle Stowers is in AAA once again. Now, if you remember, Stowers in the Orioles' first 9 games only had 8 plate appearances and was 1 for 8. And the Orioles sent him down to AAA to get him some regular playing time. So he played every day in AAA, and he hit the ball very well. 75 plate appearances, 293 average, 427 on base, 569 slugging, 5 homers, 17 Ks, but only 13 walks as well. Was a really nice outing. And he comes back to the big leagues for the Orioles, and they didn't play him every day, but they played him much more over the past week or so. And I get it. It's still a very small sample size, right? It's still only been 33 plate appearances at the big league level for Stowers this year. And even with the, just shy of 100 plate appearances he had in the big leagues last year, it's still a very, very small sample size overall in the big leagues. But while last year he was serviceable when he was out there, the Orioles have tried to give him more chances, and it just wasn't good. Stowers now in the big leagues this year is 2 for 30. with no power, basically. Both of his hits have been singles. He's got 12 strikeouts in that time, just 3 walks. That is a 0.67 batting average in the bigs this year for Kyle Stowers. He's made a couple of nice defensive plays, also bungled a couple of errors in the outfield as well. And with the Orioles needing to send a hitter down, it was either going to be Stowers, Vavra, or Joey Ortiz, and they decided to keep Ortiz, I think because Mateo's been struggling a bit, and keep Vavra because he's more versatile than Stowers. He can play the infield and the outfield. He's still a left-handed bat, and honestly, although his bat has struggled, I think the O's trust Vavra defensively more in right field right now. I think it's close, but I think they trust Vavra more than they do Stowers, so that's why Kyle Stowers was sent back down. And the Orioles said again on Monday, Brandon Hyde said it was a tough conversation, but Stowers understood. And they just wanted him to get consistent at-bats again and get back to the level he was playing in AAA Norfolk. But I am worried about his long-term outlook at this point. Because A, it hasn't been good this year. And again, 33 plate appearances. That is such a small sample size. But it's not as much about Stowers himself and what he's done at the major league level. I mean, I think they're going to give him at least one more chance. I mean, he's still young. He was a 3rd-round pick of the Michael Elias regime. He's still got some skills. He's got pop. But when you think about who the easy replacement for Stowers is, right? That's Colton Cowser, already in AAA. Higher prospect, always has been. Kyle Stowers was never a top 100 prospect. Colton Cowser is almost across the board a top 100 prospect. He has a much higher ceiling, I think most people think, than Kyle Stowers. He was a 1st-round pick. Stowers was a 3rd-round pick. And when you look at what Cowser is doing right now in AAA Norfolk, 36 games, 174 plate appearances entering play on Tuesday, 336 average, 477 on base, 567 slugging, with 7 home runs and a 168 WRC plus, meaning he is 68% better than a league average AAA hitter. And here's the big thing. His walks were down, his strikeouts were way up last year. He has reversed that. He has a 20% walk rate, one of the best in all of AAA, and he's lowered his strikeout rate from 31% last year, which is an alarming number, to 22%. Now, you'd like him to get it under 20, but 22, if you're hitting like he is totally fine in today's game of Major League Baseball. 31% is iffy. 22 is perfectly fine. He's gotten that back down. He was just International League Player of the Week last week, hit 500 with multiple home runs. Now, Michael Elias did say the other day he still wants Cowser to spend more time in AAA, but if he keeps hitting like this, and they want a left-handed hitting outfielder, and Stowers is in AAA and is not hitting at the bigs, and although Vavra is still here, he hasn't hit at all this year at the bigs. I mean, he got the start in right field on Monday and had another 0 for 2, did draw a walk, but hitting 214 on the year. If that continues, and Cowser takes this performance into June and July, we're going to see Colton Cowser just kind of take the Vavra/Stowers position on the roster. And he's going to play more, and he might platoon more with Austin Hayes. He might DH. They'll get him in the lineup, and they'll have more of a reason to get him in the lineup than they do Vavra or Stowers, because Cowser, I think they think, is just a bigger part of the future at this point. So I am a little worried about Stowers, and I think, he can still make it. He can still turn things around. He can switch the swing decisions, and he can tap into the power a little more, and he can get a little better defensively. But there's better prospects behind him, and coming up behind Cowser is Heston Kjerstad, who's an outfielder and who's dominating in AA right now. And behind them, you got Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian, who are great in high A right now. It just keeps going down the list where there's guys with the Orioles think, and I think too, higher ceilings than Kyle Stowers. Is his time with the O's done? No, it is not. He's got plenty of time to figure it out. But the time is taken away a little bit because how good Cowser has been, how bad Stowers has been. And if I had to guess right now, if Kyle Stowers makes it as at least a consistent guy on a big league roster, is it with the Orioles or another team? I'd say another team at this point. He does have trade value still if the O's wanted to do that route and acquire a big leaguer sometime at the deadline. They're not just going to cut him loose and DFA him. That's not happening. But I could see the trade route going. I think it would be another team. And I still believe in Kyle Stowers. It's just I believe in Cowser, Kjerstad, Fabian, and Beavers more. And that's really working against Stowers, unfortunately, because he seems like a great guy and he's fun to watch when he's on, but he is not that in terms of being on at the plate right now. It's been a struggle. He looks lost. And hopefully this time at AAA, he can figure it out, come back, and produce for the O's. But that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening in and watching. O's and Angels Game 2 is coming up tonight at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. O's trying to even up the series. They'll go with Dean Kremer on the mound for a 6:35 start. Angels will follow with the young right-hander Chase Silseth, who came up to the big leagues last year. He's just 22 years old, and he will make his first start of the year, just 8 1/3 innings in relief this year. He has a 3.24 ERA. So we'll see if the O's can even the series. Either way, I'll be back with you tomorrow recapping Game 2 between the O's and the Halos. Hopefully Shohei Ohtani doesn't beat the O's up as much in tonight's game. But I'm back tomorrow. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.